Very active weather day yesterday. Let's see what we have in store for the rest of the week. Hello, everybody. It's meteorologist Jacob Campbell here with your WeatherNow forecast. So, before we really get into it, I want to take a look at yesterday. Now, yesterday there was a pretty big tornado event, especially for the month of December, down here in the southern U.S. There was, if you remember, a moderate risk for severe storms, including I believe there was a 30% risk for tornadoes down there, as well as a hatched area, which a hatched area means there is a potential for a significant severe tornado event, which means that you're going to get tornadoes from about EF2 to about EF5. Whereas if you don't have that significant severe, they're mostly looking at weaker tornadoes in the EF0 to EF1 category. And then there was also a 45% chance of that wind threat, the high wind threat. There wasn't a significant severe on that, which means that wind was below 65 knots for the most part. But that being said, there were a significant amount of these tornado reports and a significant amount of these wind reports. So we see right here that there were 43 tornado reports. Now, the National Weather Service is currently out surveying areas where these tornadoes, where these supposed tornadoes have hit. Not all of these are tornadoes. A lot of people tend to mistake wind damage with tornado damage. And so the National Weather Service will send out their forecasters to go and survey locations because they know what they're looking for when it comes down to tornadoes. So, at least preliminary reports, there are 43 tornado reports. Then there were 99 wind reports. And so that really goes to show you there were 14 hail reports. And if you watched my video yesterday, I did talk about how there was a lower chance for hail and a much higher chance for wind. Wind being the primary threat yesterday, tornadoes coming second, and then hail in last. So once again, though, for all these different reports, especially tornado reports, the National Weather Service gets sent out and they survey the damage, and just to make sure that this stuff really did happen. And you can read through here the bottom portion, and it'll tell you where these tornadoes may have hit. And then there are comments on it as to who reported it, what type of damage was seen, whether or not it was fatal, or how many injuries and whatnot. So if you want to look down here, this is at the spc.noaa.gov website. Then you can go to their products tab, and then you can look at their archives, and then you can look at the archives for today. The filtered storm reports, which this isn't considered complete yet, as we saw those unfiltered reports, there were 43 tornado reports. That has been toned down to 33 tornado reports. Where we had 99 wind reports, that's now down to 63. And while we had 14 hail reports, well, we still have 14 hail reports. It's really difficult to determine whether or not there was hail after the fact, considering that this could be hail the size of pennies. So let's take a look now at the temperatures. So the temperatures are going to be really important because we did have a high snow. We had a fair amount of snow here for areas stretching from parts of Missouri through Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and now it's affecting places up in the East Coast, up through areas like Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, and so on and so forth. So temperatures are going to be fairly important the next few days when talking about snow melt. So currently we've got this core of cold air here just sitting over the midsection of the country, really affecting Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, these central areas. And obviously as you go up in the mountains, because they're higher off the ground, the temperatures are going to be a little on the colder side. But as we go through the rest of the day and into tonight, we see that core of cold air here from Canada pushing off to the east, really starting to affect the more Minnesota and Wisconsin and the upper peninsula of Michigan. And so places that saw snow melt today may see a refreeze, and so that could cause ice on driveways, ice on the roadways, but the roadways are less prone to that because of drainage and then also because of salt. But if there is standing water that could refreeze tonight, And then this is going to push off to the east and then really start to affect that New England area with temperatures in the single digits and even areas of, where was that? Northern New York here. I see -9 degrees Fahrenheit. I even saw a -10 a second ago, but I can't find that again. Vermont and New Hampshire, same thing. Little on the warmer side for Maine, but not so much. And then if you live near the coast, your temperatures are going to remain higher than the inland areas because you do have the heat off of the ocean to kind of keep your towns and cities warm and your coastal areas warm that the interior of your states don't have the luxury of. But we do see that this is still overnight hours. We do see that areas of really the Midwest and the Great Plains are beginning to warm up a little bit. Where we saw negative temperatures in the Great Plains, we're now seeing temperatures in the 20s. And this is still overnight because as we push into the day, you see that warming begin to happen. And so places like Iowa will raise into the 40s. Now, I don't think Iowa got very much snow, but places like St. Louis, who did get a fair amount of snow, is going to be 44 tomorrow. So a lot of that snow melt is going to begin, and you're going to see a lot of that snow and ice, if you had ice on your driveways, begin to melt. Places in Illinois, same deal. You're going to be slightly above freezing, so snow melt won't happen nearly as quickly. Same with Indiana. Indianapolis looking at about 34 degrees Fahrenheit here. And then the further east and north that you push, the more cold it's going to get. So the snow that they're getting right now in New England is going to stick around for a little while. Now, we're going to quickly take a look at snow depth, a snow depth map taken at 1 a.m. This morning. So we see areas of St. Louis here, or right around St. Louis, are sitting between 9.8 inches and 20 inches of snow. This is from the Office of Water Prediction. And this is just their national snow analysis. And so we do also see that areas like Indianapolis are sitting right between 3.9 and 9.8 inches. In my front yard, I think I logged, it was about 5 to 6 inches of snow. Really depends on where you take it. But then areas, just this little band here through Illinois, Missouri, and Indiana, we are in between that 3.9 and 9.8 inch mark, as well as parts of Kansas here. And if you were paying attention to the snow system, it really did start in this Nebraska or Kansas area. And so parts of Kansas are also seeing that 3.9 to 9.8 inch mark. A little bit of a dusting in those surrounding areas. Chicago not really getting much of anything, but the majority of the rest of Illinois did. Most of Indiana did, with the exception of the far southern portion where they mainly saw freezing rain and rain. And then also down here in southern Missouri, not a whole lot to talk about either. Snow is beginning to fall once again. As you go closer to the coasts, you still have that heat that's been stored over the summer and over the fall. On the oceans, it's giving it off, and it's helping to melt that snow that has fallen near the coasts, or the stuff on the coasts may not have even fallen as snow, and it may have fallen as rain instead, because you do have that heat coming off of the ocean. Parts of northern Maine right now sitting between 3.9 and 9.8, and that's really a similar story as you go through most of New England, especially as you get into higher altitudes as well. In the Rocky Mountains and especially higher altitudes, once again, we're seeing between 39 and 59 inches. Now, this makes sense because they've been seeing consistent snowfall since about September. So if you take into account the amount of systems that have come through, and almost every system in that area has been dropping snow, it adds up pretty quickly. And then the lake effect, you can really see here around Lake Superior. You've got areas of 20 to 39 inches if you live directly off of that lake up there, and then some slightly smaller bands as you go around that. We're going to head right back over here and go to the simulated reflectivity. Actually, this is reflectivity with precipitation typing, which means that there's an algorithm, and they determine what areas are going to be seeing snow, what areas are going to be seeing freezing rain and mixed precipitation, and what areas are going to be seeing primarily just rain. And so we can see that system that was affecting Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana is now really pushing into New England, bringing a lot of that snowfall to New York, and then Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, and a lot of those northeastern states. And that will continue to stick around really until until probably around Thursday, and we see there's a lot of lake effect that's going to be picking up this snow that's not really being triggered by anything except for the lakes, because there are no real low pressure systems coming through, with the exception of the one that's just moved off into Canada and off the coast. And so that snow there will stick around for a while. And we can see that there is a winter weather advisory in effect for parts of Pennsylvania. In fact, there's a winter storm warning in some of the higher altitudes in Pennsylvania. Excuse that, it just refreshed. And then we also have a lake effect snow warning off of, what is that, Lake... I'm not entirely sure which lake this is. I know that's Lake Erie. I need to be better at my lakes. But we do have a lake effect snow warning off of that, and you did see a lot of that lake effect snow come off of the simulated reflectivity with precip typing. Also down here off of Lake Erie County, Pennsylvania is going to also be seeing a lake effect snow warning, as well as a winter weather advisory. So if you live near these lakes, you could expect more snowfall than the interior up here, and especially the places off of the coast. You are expecting less snow than the interior, as well as less snow than off of the lakes. So we're going to move back over here, and the next thing that we're going to take a look at is the total accumulated snowfall. Now, there are two main methods that people use when trying to determine snowfall. There's the Kuchera method, which is the one that I prefer, and then there's also the 10-to-1 snowfall method. Now, the difference between the two is that a 10-to-1 snow to liquid ratio, that means for every 10 inches of snow, if you melted it down, you would get an inch of water. The 10-to-1 is the national average. The further south you go, the higher that snow to liquid ratio is. And then the further to the north that you go and the drier you get, typically the lower that is, the higher it is. So you'll see a lot of 20-to-1s and 30-to-1s versus if you're near the Gulf of Mexico or near an ocean, your snow to liquid ratio tends to be higher. But the Kuchera method takes into account different things that really factor into what your true snow to liquid ratio is. So they take into account dew point, whether or not there are warm layers or cold layers within your sounding. So you have to take a look at SKUTs when you're trying to determine the Kuchera ratio. And then it can also help tell you what type of precipitation is likely to fall. While total accumulated snowfall really determines on whatever algorithm the model is using, the total accumulated snowfall Kuchera can also determine whether or not, on its own, based on the sounding, whether or not you're looking at ice or you're looking at snowfall. And so that's why I prefer the Kuchera method. It is typically a more accurate way of depicting snowfall. So we're going to move into tonight, and we really see those snow totals start to pile up. Parts of New York seeing about 6 inches, 4 inches in some more interior areas, but as you get near the lakes, you see a bit of a higher value here. In Vermont, looking at 9 inches in places, but it really looks like 6 to 9 inches is going to be just about what you're going to get. Some areas getting a little less than that. And then throughout tonight and into tomorrow, also in southern Maine and coastal Maine, you're going to see some snowfall totaling between 2 and 6 inches. And then progressing through, you can really see that lake effect snow starting to pile up over here with some fairly high totals getting to about 7 inches in areas. Although near the lakes, this isn't really a whole lot of snow. But if you live in the middle of the country, this does tend to be quite a bit of snow. Then there's also going to be some snowfall here on the west coast, but more in the mountains. They're not really going to get a whole lot of snow along the coastal areas or in the more the valleys of California or the valleys of Oregon and Washington. It's mainly going to be those mountaintops that are going to be seeing these larger quantities of snowfall totaling up to 8 inches in places. And then also, if we take a look at the reflectivity here, we do see that there's going to be quite a bit of rainfall. When I say quite a bit, I mean when like compared to normal. For northern California as well as parts of Oregon and Washington. And this is the NAM 3 kilometer model. And this is the one that I like to use for short range forecasting. And then we see as we get into Friday, this is actually Thursday night, sorry. Friday 0Z is Thursday night. It's around 7 p.m. Eastern time. We do see that there's going to be quite a bit of rain once again coming onshore, and then as this rain hits the mountains, it will turn into snow. Now, the last thing that we're going to look at is Cape, especially for all that rain that's off of here on the East Coast, plus the rain, West Coast, plus the rain that's stretching down from that low pressure system that really hammered the Gulf of Mexico yesterday, as well as Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. So most of the Cape right now really centered offshore, 3,000 joules per kilogram of Cape, right off of the East Coast near Florida. But we can see that that will mostly stay offshore. And then if we look to the west, there's going to be some Cape offshore, but not a whole lot of it really making it onto land, because what happens is as you lose the moisture from the ocean, your air mass becomes more stable, and so you don't have a lot of that kind of lifting that will happen once you introduce a front. So you'll get more flat clouds and more of a rain and drizzle type event and less of a thunderstorm event. You may hear a couple rumbles of thunder, but I think that's not very likely. So, with that being said, I hope that you all enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you did, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you all, and have a great day.